Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Anxiety Chats. Today, we are joined by Jessica, a mum to a small child who also has experience herself of postnatal depression and anxiety. So, welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on today. What your experience of anxiety is, when it started for you.
Yeah, I think for me, so after I had my little girl, I'd probably say the first kind of bout of anxiety I felt like I had was taking her out for the first time. And it wasn't completely on my own, but I'd gone out with my partner and he'd left me halfway to go off and do something else. And it was only for 15, 20 minutes, but in that space of time, I mean, I had everything with me that I needed for her. And I remember going into Boots, to print off some pictures. And she was sound asleep in the buggy, and then all of a sudden she was kind of stirring. She wasn't crying or awake, she just started stirring. And for me, I literally was just I just dropped everything and just walked out of the shop and was just like, oh my God, if she starts crying while we're out and if she needs feeding, I need to find somewhere to go and sit with her. And she wasn't awake or anything, but for me, all of a sudden, I just felt like, oh my God, I'm on my own. I don't know what to do. If she starts crying, everybody's going to be looking at me and thinking why can you not settle your child? And I was just like, oh my God, just waiting for my partner to come back. And we ended up going to sit in a McDonald's, and we were sitting eating, and the whole time I just felt myself scratching myself and just doing this all the time. And he was just like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And he was just like, do you want to go home? And I'm like, yeah, I want to go home. And this whole time she was asleep, absolutely fine. But just something in me just felt so anxious, I just couldn't deal with being out. And it was just really weird because I've never experienced it before. And I was just I don't know why I felt like that, because I was just we prepared everything. I had a flask full of hot water and bottles and milk and nappy changing stuff. But when it actually came to her kind of potentially waking up and being out for the first time, I was just oh my God, I don't know what to do. Looking back on it, it was just I don't know what I was worrying about, but it was literally just that first episode of kind of anxiety that I was just I don't even know why I'm feeling like this. And my partner was just but what's going on? Why do you feel like that? She's fine, she's asleep. And I was just I don't know. Don't ask me why, because I couldn't even tell you at the time. I just knew.
It makes total sense, really, when you think about it, that you also have gone through all of those. You've gone through birth and pregnancy. You have all these different hormones, all these new hormones in your body, and you're suddenly overnight responsible for a whole human being. I think a lot of anxiety is kind of about pressure and responsibility and stuff. It's when you feel like there's pressure and there's no other option. You couldn't have, in that situation, if she'd started crying, you couldn't have really controlled that because she's a baby. So it's when you can't control, it's oh my God. And so then things like staying at home is kind of well, that feels easier because I know where everything is and I'm not worried about noise and stuff like that. But after that first bit of anxiety, did that kind of knock you a little bit? Did you feel oh, that was kind of weird?
It did a little bit, but then it also kind of made me push myself to kind of just take short, times out on my own, because I was just at this point, I was just my partner's soon going to be going back to work. And I was just I can't just be in the house with her 24/7. I'm going to go crazy otherwise. So it was just I tried to push myself just to go on short little walks with her, just to be right, okay, I know that she's already been fed, she's been changed, she'll just go to sleep, and just kind of do short walks around our area. And then it was okay, now I've kind of feel comfortable with that. It's right, let's try and get on the bus with her. And just kind of do a few stops on the bus. And it was fine because at that age, she literally was just, you put her in the buggy and she was asleep for hours. It wasn't an issue compared to now, when it's just she's more awake and you've kind of got to entertain her. But I felt kind of pushing myself a little bit each time to kind of go a little bit further with her helped, because I'm just the more I kind of stay inside and just shy away from it, the worse it's going to be when there's actually going to be times when I might have to take her to doctor's appointments and things like that. And I'm then I'm just going to freak out. So true, what you said, you're after you've kind of given birth, it's now you're responsible for this small little human who depends on you for everything. And I feel for us, because we kind of did like a lot of classes and stuff before about birth and everything else, but I don't feel like anybody prepares you for the after bit, like how long potentially you may have to stay in hospital. Because for me, I was just like, well, I've heard so many people be like, oh yeah, they just push you out the door now. It's literally like, you're fine, off you go. And I mean, both me and my daughter, when she was born, had an infection, but like we had a temperature for maybe like an hour or so afterwards, and then it went down. She was fine in herself, eating, sleeping, everything fine. But we had to stay in for like 5 or 6 days afterwards. And for me, that caused a bit of anxiety for myself, because there was me expecting to be like, oh, we might stay in for like 24 hours and then be able to go home. We had to stay for 5 days. And obviously, the whole time I was at hospital, I felt kind of quite confident. But then it was like, they said, oh, we could go home. And I was just like, right, let's go. I need to get out of here. But then when we got home, it was just like, oh, now it's kind of actually set in now that she's not going anywhere and we're solely responsible for her. And it kind of felt like while we were in the hospital, she was fine, like even with noises and everything else, like she was fine. And we were just like, oh yeah, everyone was like, oh, you've got such a good baby, like she hardly ever cries. And people were like, don't say that, because when you go home it's probably going to be a different story. And it completely was.
See, this is the thing, and I imagine it's like really, like most new mothers get this experience of like, even if you've never experienced anxiety before in your life, suddenly feeling anxious and suddenly feeling like, oh God, there's so many things I can't control. And now this little human kind of controls everything. And I don't really have a say. I just have to kind of go with what she wants. And it's kind of like the lack of like, you're now just kind of, everything revolves around her, which of course that's the way it should be, because obviously she's just a little baby. But it's I imagine that's really, really tricky. I think I'd find that really difficult, and maybe even slightly claustrophobic, of being like, okay, so you're here now and you're not going anywhere. Okay. I imagine that's really tricky. And was there anything at that time, like, did you feel supported at that time when you were like like brand new mum and you were experiencing, like, because you also experienced postnatal depression, am I right?
Yeah, so I had like a really good support network around me. Like my partner was just absolutely amazing. And I think probably when she was only 3 or 4 weeks old, she was just like, the two of you just go out, go and have some lunch and just get out of the house together and we'll look after her. And it felt really weird for us just to kind of go out without a buggy and having to take a whole load of stuff. I think for me, like during this whole period of time, like during the anxiety and the postnatal depression, it's sometimes been really difficult to actually feel like I can say what I'm really feeling, because a lot of it feels to me like if I say that out loud, it's like I'm saying I don't want my child and I don't love her. But a lot of the time, like I've done like loads of mum group sessions and stuff, and everybody's just like, you know what, it's okay not to enjoy being a mum every single day. Like there's going to be times when you're just going to be like, I can't deal with this, like it's too much, I don't know what to do. And then there's going to be other times when you're just like your child's going to do something and you're just going to be like, oh, that's so amazing. Like it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to sometimes feel like the anxiety is kind of getting too much, because especially I find now there's times when I'm like, oh, I feel great and it's all going well, and then it can be just a case of she's had a bad night and I'm just like, oh my God, this is too much. Like she was sleeping well before and now she's not sleeping well and we're doing the same thing. Like, do I need to change things, and do I need to do something different, or am I not doing something right? And like, just from talking to my mum as well, sometimes she's just like, you know what? She's like, babies will change. She said, just because they sleep well now doesn't mean that's it. They're going to sleep well all the time now. And that's the end of it. There can be a million reasons. It could be teething. They might not feel 100%. They might be hungry. They might be cold. And she's just like, these are the times that you wish that they could talk to you and tell you why it is. Because she said one night they may decide they could be really amazing sleepers, and then one night they won't sleep at all, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? Like, you don't normally do that. And then the next day they'll go back to normal.